against Bitcoin.
It's going up forever.
You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom.
Yo! Welcome to Simply Bitcoin Live, the most watched daily Bitcoin live show on YouTube, Rumble, and X. We are your source for the separation of money and state. Sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. Guys, a little bit of a technical mishap. We, as you guys know, we live streamed the entire Canadian Bitcoin conference for you guys this week. It seems like my Roadcaster did not survive the travel, so we're getting it fixed. We should have the audio back up to par by like Wednesday of this week. So bear with us in the meantime. But guys, today's show is going to be absolutely loaded with news. Jack Dorsey, the ex-CEO of Twitter, and of course, he's like moved on to greater and better things. He's focusing completely on Bitcoin nowadays. He did that recent investment into the Ocean mining pool initiative. I got to actually attend the event in, I think it was South Carolina. It was absolutely crazy. So yeah, he is predicting, like Cathie Wood, that Bitcoin's price will go beyond $1 million by 2030. So another notable person saying, basically what a lot of us are thinking, what a lot of us are anticipating. After all, it is infinity, 21 million, or infinity divided by 21 million. So interesting news. Also, news coming out of Venezuela. It seems like the Venezuelan government is trying to crack down on Bitcoin mining. Obviously, they didn't get the memo. That didn't really work out very well in China. But, it's, I guess, can't blame them for not trying, I guess. And of course, I think the big news of today is Craig Wright. We could finally say this. It's not coming out of Simply Bitcoin. It's coming out of a judge in the UK. It's undeniable at this point. He said that Craig Wright is a liar. He lied. And, a lot of people are anticipating potential criminal charges because a lot of the things that Craig Wright did, apparently, you could say it was fraud. And again, that's not me saying this. It's a UK court that is making this type of statement. And now, of course, I think this is the end of a very long saga that a lot of Bitcoiners were part of. It affected them. Shout out to specifically the Space Cat Hodlnaut and Peter McCormack for really taking the brunt of this, spending a lot of money on legal fees just to stand up for the truth, right? This is someone who was very well funded, someone that tried to use the legal system in order to silence his opponents, silence thought, which is you would think he claims he's Satoshi, someone who invented or discovered depending on which way the way that you see it, they would go out of their way to silence people. That doesn't sound like something that Satoshi would do or say. So anyways, I think that this is the end of a very, very kind of ugly thing that some Bitcoiners had to go through. I think this is finally end, for a judge to go out and basically say that Craig Wright lied, essentially. Also, another news as well, we had the Bitcoin for Corporations event, but there is a specific clip that I want to play for you guys today of Michael Saylor just talking about, the next 5 to 10 years really of, what would happen if, major corporations or, in this example specifically, he said 10,000 corporations started, allocating some of their treasuries into Bitcoin. What would happen, right? I think a lot of things would happen, right? What would happen if if these corporations, instead of selling their own stock, they just bought Bitcoin instead, right? It's just very food for thought. And of course, he is standing on the performance of MicroStrategy compared to everything else, which is something that he did in the investor quarterly Zoom call. And it was really interesting in that call because the way that he said it was like a flex, the way that I perceived it, because he had the chart, which we'll show for you guys, comparing MicroStrategy to the S&P 500, to the NASDAQ, to gold, to silver, to bonds, even to the big tech stocks. And there was like an intern in the back that tried to pull that down and make Michael Saylor full screen. He was like, no, leave that up, which tells me that, he wants people to see that, right? And also we have a very, very special guest as well. We have Patrick Fleury as well. He's the CFO. Is that correct, Patrick?
Yeah, that's right.
the CFO of TeraWolf, joining us today to talk about Bitcoin mining. Really excited. We're really excited to hear about that. Also, really excited to hear about TeraWolf, what's going on over there. And of course, my legendary co-host, who's always optimistic, holding it down with me in Canada this weekend at the Canadian Bitcoin Conference. Dude, that was what? Friday, Saturday, 2 back-to-back streams, 9 hours each.
Well, even Thursday, we got to get early, set up. Yeah, it was a long weekend, but it was so worth it. I absolutely love the city of Montreal. It's a great city. Good meeting all of you guys in person. The amount of love we got from every single one of you guys, it feels incredible, and it just knows that what we're doing is super important, and that you guys rely on us to show up, be consistent, give you guys the facts, at least as far as we can tell at the very moment. But I do want to give us a very special shout out, Nico. I want to give a special shout out to the whole Bitcoin Well team. We shared a house with them. Absolutely incredible team. And for you guys out there, we saw some sneak peeks of the things they're working on, and they are working constantly from the time they woke up to the time we went to bed to ship really, really cool stuff for you guys. So in the next couple of weeks, you'll probably be hearing about that. But we did get some cool sneak peeks, and man, it works so much more incredible in Canada. Than I kept yelling at them like, yeah, that's cool and all, but like, we're American. Make sure it works that great for us. But man, they're doing incredible work. I absolutely love the whole team. It was great hanging out with them, and maybe I'll see them soon. Nico, maybe I'll see them soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We might be coming back to Canada real quick, very, very soon. I also want to give this opportunity to Patrick to give a little bit of just a breakdown what TeraWolf is for anyone who's not in the know. Obviously, it's a publicly traded Bitcoin mining company that's currently listed on the Nasdaq. But I'm sure Patrick would do a little bit of a better job just describing the company overall. So, Patrick, if you were to give a quick 1 to 2 minute elevator pitch, what is TeraWolf? Why should our listeners care? Because you're talking to a bunch of hardcore Bitcoiners. Of course, they're on the mission. You know, they're behind this network. They're behind this awesome initiative. So, what is TeraWolf?
Yeah, well, let me start. Thank you guys for having me. You guys do an amazing service for the whole Bitcoin community. So really appreciate the privilege of being on here with you guys. So thank you. So yeah, quick elevator pitch, and I'll be shorter than a minute or two. But you know, we are the largest zero carbon public Bitcoin miner in the U.S. We mine with about 95% zero carbon power sources. And really what distinguishes us from others is a couple things. One, we have an extremely low cost of power. So we actually have a unicorn, I like to call it that, meaning we mine behind the meter at one of the nation's largest nuclear facilities. We are the only one in the US that does that. That's one of our sites, and that's locked in power at 2 cents for 5 years. And then our other site in upstate New York pulls power directly from Niagara Falls about 95% of the time. So we're mining with hydroelectric power there. Our blended cost to mine last year was 3.2 cents for the entire year. Wow. I think that puts us among the lowest. So again, super low production cost, zero carbon, management team, insiders, and the board. We own about 40% of the equity of the company. So we are really aligned with all other shareholders. And I think, you know, a little different. We're much more careful about dilution on our ATM because of that fact. You know, we still do dilute to grow accretively, but we're much more strategic about it as opposed to many of our peers are systematic. And, you know, we're very obviously ESG focused, as I mentioned. We've got a lot of women on our management team. About 50% of executives are women, and we're zero carbon focused. So I think that's kind of big picture. I would say the one other thing we do a little bit differently than most others is we don't have a big HODL balance. We don't HODL right now. We monetize what we mine. And so like a true commodity company, you know, I'm mining it today at about 40,000. I checked this morning, you know, it's on the screens at 67. So I'm generating about 6.5 Bitcoin a day. And we're selling that and taking those proceeds, paying down debt, and then also using that cash to grow accretively. So that's a quick snapshot of what we do.
Awesome. Well, man, I'm really excited, Patrick, to hear more about it during the culture segment. We're going to highlight Tara Wolf, what you guys get into more detail of everything you just said. That was an incredible elevator pitch, by the way. Highlighted all the important points. So looking forward to hearing more about it during the culture segment, guys. Like I said, if you're tuning in, our soundboard did not survive the trip back from Canada.
Well, Nico's didn't.
Mine didn't. So we are currently working on a fix. We should have that fixed for you guys, so the audio's back up to pair by Tuesday, Wednesday. So bear with us, but the show don't stop. This is Simply Bitcoin. After all, the Honey Badger doesn't stop. Honey Badger Media doesn't stop. All right, everybody. Before we dive into the numbers, I do want to give an extremely special shout out to our lead sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. It is a self-custody, by default, non-custodial Bitcoin platform. Future-proof your money. What does self-custody by default? What does automatic self-custody mean? That means that you can't buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well unless you're going to take self-custody, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Support self-custody by default Bitcoin on-ramps, because that's really, really what's going to change things, because self-custody is the revolution. Check out bitcoinwell.com/simply. The website is incredibly easy to use. Buy real Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well. You put in your email, you get started. You put in your information. There's a transparent 1% spread, which is an industry standard. It's Bitcoin only. It's obviously non-custodial. So it's a little bit different than, a lot of these other platforms, because it's non-custodial. As soon as you buy Bitcoin, the funds clear. It goes straight to your self-custody wallet. It doesn't give you the option to leave it on the platform, right? Self-custody is a revolution. We want millions upon millions of individuals all over the world taking self-custody of their Bitcoin. So visit bitcoinwell.com/simply to get started today. All right, everybody, let's hit the numbers.
Bitcoin numbers.
Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Is your seed phrase really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them on paper. Don't store your generational wealth on paper. Paper is prone to water damage, fire damage. You want to put your generational wealth on one of the strongest metals on planet Earth, titanium. Your words are actually stamped into this metal plate with this hammer and these letter stamps. And once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamped seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin with peace of mind for the long haul. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed.
All right, everybody. I made it incredibly easy for you guys, so you have absolutely no excuse. You could scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you directly to the Stamp Seed website, where you could use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off. Stamp your generational wealth on titanium. Don't write it down on steel. Don't write it down on paper. Don't write it down on steel.
Long weekend, huh?
Stamp it on titanium. Yeah, dude, I can't even hear myself back without using the soundboard. So this is a little bit of a curveball starting off Monday. But anyways, we'll roll through it. This is live. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is 67,720 sats per dollar, 1,477. Block height, 844,320. Blocks to halving, 205,680. Halving estimate, March 22nd, 2028. Total Lightning Network capacity, 4,645 Bitcoin. Capacity value, 314 million. Realized monetary inflation, 1.66%. Market capitalization, 1.33 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 8.04%. In the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin is just getting started. Anyways, I did mention this little bit by Michael Saylor. This is a clip from the Bitcoin for Corporations live stream that was hosted by our friends over at Bitcoin Magazine. I'll play the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Imagine what happens when 10,000 operating companies start recapitalizing. Imagine a world where 10,000 companies keep their cash flows and don't dividend them out. Imagine 10,000 companies buying Bitcoin instead of buying their own stock. Imagine 10,000 companies issuing debt securities to buy Bitcoin instead of issuing debt to buy their own stock. right? And you can see how at some point, as you go from one company to 10 companies to 100 companies to 1,000 companies, at some point these become a massive capital gateway, and that's how you see the trillions and tens of trillions of dollars of capital flow out of the analog economy into the digital economy, and the world turns upside down for those firms.
So I saved this clip specifically because I knew Patrick was coming on today. Patrick, you are the CFO of a publicly traded company. So what is the significance of what Michael Saylor just said?
Yeah, look, I think it's and maybe my perspective is a little bit different just because I've been on the institutional investing buy side of Wall Street for almost 18 years before I was CFO at TeraWolf. So look, I think what he's getting at, which is simply with the advent of ETFs, the institutional community now is very focused on this asset class. And I think as that becomes more accepted by folks like my old firm, Blackstone, and also BlackRock and others, then as companies turn to treasury management strategies, right, Bitcoin becomes a very logical piece of that treasury management strategy. So I think, just as adoption increases, I think you're likely to see companies not just use, money market funds and treasuries, but Bitcoin. And so I think it's just a simple adoption strategy as it becomes, more institutionally acceptable.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And then also the just the flex. I think because you could talk this big game, right? And you could say that these things are happening, but I think the proof is in the work. The data is the data. This has been MicroStrategy's performance since they've adopted a Bitcoin strategy. They've even outperformed Bitcoin in a way, right? So Bitcoin, the S&P 500, and for our audio listeners, the Nasdaq is up the MicroStrategy is up 937%. Bitcoin is up 435%. The S&P is up 52%. The Nasdaq is up 45%. Gold is up 15%. Silver is down 3%. Bonds down 21%. Google is up 132%. Microsoft is up 95%. Meta is up 69%. So clearly, what Michael Saylor has done, adopting this Bitcoin strategy, this alternative to holding fiat, is he's outperformed a lot of these a lot of these traditional investments. So I think it's extremely interesting. Let's see how this plays out. Opti, what's your take on this, brother?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, obviously love this graphic, and we're going to keep it up. I was going to full screen myself, but we'll keep it up because I think, and Larry Lepard said this on the live stream at lunch on day 2. And yes, of course, as Bitcoiners, we don't like to speculate on price, or quote unquote don't like to speculate on price. And, everyone gets yelled out because number go up. And it's like, it's not all about number go up. It's about freedom go up. But as Larry Lepard was saying, it's very important to explain to people that Bitcoin is the best performing asset in the last 15 years. Like it bar none is the best way to save value. Or if you want to just look at it as an investment, it's the best returns in the last 15 years is because of Bitcoin. So I don't think we can beat that topic enough into people's brains because people need to know the majority of people still think that Bitcoin's a scam or, it's internet money or whatever FUD lines they've heard. But on paper, the numbers don't lie. It is the best performing asset in the world. And so as much as Bitcoiners like to avoid the topic of price and Bitcoin price or saying that the Bitcoin price is irrelevant and all that stuff, it's very important to show to average everyday people basically what is in it for them. And it's the best performing asset, period. Anything has never come close to Bitcoin. Yes, Michael Saylor is doing some incredible stuff with MicroStrategy, and now we're seeing that there's different avenues now to incorporate Bitcoin and maybe outperform Bitcoin. But for average everyday people, Bitcoin is the best performing asset commodity in the world. And it all goes back to one basic principle that we like to beat in people's heads, is that everyone on planet Earth, whether it's an individual or a corporation or a nation state, we all have the same problem. We are all looking for ways to store our value. And the traditional quote unquote risk-free assets are no longer risk-free. Most people would much rather buy a treasury or something of the sort. And now they're realizing maybe I don't don't want government debt. Maybe this is not the way to store my value. And maybe I just want to simplify the process and save in the hardest, best money that the world has ever seen. And maybe I want to simplify my life by just saving in Bitcoin. And it all goes back to that one simple idea that everyone on planet Earth, again, whether an individual or a corporation, has the same problem. If you are saving in fiat, you are holding melting ice cubes. And if you're buying government debt, maybe it's not as risk-free as you thought it was. And now there's an alternative, and it's called Bitcoin. So once the corporations start to really understand that very simple principle, and every corporation out there starts to have some Bitcoin on the balance sheet, like, of course, throw your tomatoes all you want, but number will go up. And with that, freedom will go up. And like Lightning Gut said in the chat, like, man, when retail finally gets into Bitcoin, the price is going to explode. So it's looking like we're going to have a very, very strong end of the year. And also, one last thing, we kind of covered it last week, but we got the Q1 disclosures of the institutions that are holding the Bitcoin ETF, of course, where we call it captured Bitcoin. We want people holding spot Bitcoin directly, but some very huge names came out, which is very not only interesting, but inspiring, that finally these institutions that I always kind of liken to like the Titanic ship turning around, they're starting to trickle into Bitcoin. So the next the next quarter, following one after that, and the end of the year, it's going to be absolutely incredible. I think we're going to have a strong end of the year, guys. So continue to stack, continue to take Bitcoin into custody. We're winning so hard. It's so absolutely incredible.
Yeah, we're winning. It's crazy what happens when you're holding NGU technology. Anyways, I do want to give a very special shout out to the Pleb Party that is happening around the Nashville Bitcoin conference. So if you're already going to the Bitcoin 2024 conference, the largest Bitcoin conference on planet Earth, that's going to be in Nashville, Tennessee this year, you definitely don't want to miss the Pleb Party. It's a 12-hour open bar from noon to midnight in Nashville the day before the biggest Bitcoin conference. It's Thursday, July 25th. Confirmed attendees so far include Larry Lepard, Preston Pish, the entire Simply Bitcoin crew, including Nico, Sophie, Opti, Rustin, James Lavish, Robert Breedlove, Mark Moss, Pubby, Tatum Turnup. It's going to be hosted at an amazing venue, a rustic automobile factory from the year 1910, with brick walls and tons of proof of work atmosphere. That's right. The venue was built before the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So it's probably a great venue. Over 1,000 Bitcoin plebs are expected to attend the event. You definitely don't want to miss this celebration. Don't wait to get your tickets, because the last event, the tickets sold out before the event. So you were turned away from the door if you didn't get your tickets. So at the current price point, there's only around 40 tickets left. You want to get your tickets now before the price increases. So you could scan the QR code, or you could check the link in the video description. Don't miss the Pleb Party at Bitcoin Nashville 2024. All right, everybody, let's hit the news. We have a lot to talk about.
The Daily News.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation Devices. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US. It's fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a simple feature phone. So you will know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes. Experience the peace of mind that comes with taking ownership of your own keys. After a massive sellout during Bitcoin Miami 2023, the Passport is back in stock at foundationdevices.com. Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, completely air-gapped security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. If you're thinking about getting your Bitcoin off exchanges, this is the one for you. Check out the Passport link in the show notes below to learn more.
All right, everybody. If you're watching this show, there's currently 740 of you guys watching. I made it incredibly easy for you guys. You can scan the QR code right now on your screen. It will take you directly to the Passport by Foundation Devices website, where you guys can get yourself a Passport hardware wallet. Remember, guys, regain your sovereignty using Bitcoin, but you can only do that if you're taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. And if you pair the Passport wallet with the Envoy app, even like Opti was messaging when he did it, he was like freaking out. He was like, Nico, this is so easy. It literally makes spending Bitcoin from cold storage incredibly easy. So check out Passport by Foundation Devices, scan the QR code, or check the link in the video description. All right, everybody, let's get to today's news. We have a lot to cover. First, we're going to start off with this Jack Dorsey news. So Jack Dorsey says the Bitcoin price will go beyond 1 million by 2030. Now, what's really interesting is now you have two notable figures. You have Cathie Wood from ARK Invest, and now you have Jack Dorsey. So the article goes on to say, this was originally from an interview that he did with Pirate Wires. He said someone was asking him about the Bitcoin price, and he said, quote, I don't know, over at least 1 million. I do think it hits that number and goes beyond. He goes on to say, quote, the most amazing thing about Bitcoin, apart from the founding story, is anyone who works on it or gets paid in it or buys for it themselves, even everyone who puts any efforts into it make it better, is making the entire ecosystem better, which makes the price go up. And that's a really good point. And this is something that we've hit on many, many times on Simply Bitcoin. And it's this idea of the aligned incentive structure model, which is it's in stark contrast with how the fiat system works, which I would say is a misaligned incentive structure model. Everyone in Bitcoin, miners, people who run nodes, even people that make content, just them, following their own incentives make the network stronger, right? So it's an aligned incentive structure model versus a misaligned incentive structure model. And I think if the whole world is on an aligned incentive structure model, I think it will make the world better. I think that's why us Bitcoiners always say, fix the money, fix the world. It's as simple as that, but I think a lot of people don't think it is. Anyways, it goes on to say, while 1 million seems like a stretch from Bitcoin's current price of this article was written a couple days ago, 60,886, where it's currently at 68,000, still applies though. Other big names in the industry have voiced similar outlooks. ARK Invest founder and CEO Cathie Wood has even taken it a step further, predicting the token will reach 1.5 million by 2030. Ever since stepping down as Twitter CEO in 2021, Dorsey has become an advocate for the industry, leading and endorsing several projects over the years. In 2019, he had become a backer of social media startup Blue Sky, which he recently stepped away from as his vision for a decentralized social media platform aligns more with a competitor, Nostr. I wouldn't even say Nostr. I mean, technically it's a competitor, but it's like Nostr is not a company, right? Nostr's, it's a protocol. Anyone could build on top of Nostr, right? You have different apps. You have the Damus app. You have the Primal app. So like yes and no, I guess. And it goes on to say Dorsey also founded a company called Square in 2009, which he rebranded to Block in 2021. The second piece of news, which I find interesting, is Venezuela cracks down on Bitcoin mining. It goes on to say Venezuela's Ministry of Electric Power has started to disconnect Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mining farms from the national grid. The local government claims the move will help, quote, regulate excess energy consumption. It goes on to say an ex-post from Venezuela's National Association of Cryptocurrency states that the cryptocurrency mining is now prohibited in Venezuela. Quote, we recommend that any person or company that has installed equipment uninstall it and store it to avoid inconvenience. We do not consider that this has a solution in the medium or short term. It goes on to say, as part of the crackdown, over 11,000 Bitcoin miners have been confiscated. This follows another, quote, anti-corruption initiative in the city of Maracay, where 2,000 Maracay, I'm pretty sure, where 2,000 cryptocurrency mining devices were seized. Here's like this video of this guy, like he's literally just talking about how, he's making the case as to, like we're doing this for you. Then he just kind of shows all these containers. What an interesting part of it though is that during this video he's like, I have nothing against Bitcoin or whatever, or I have nothing against cryptocurrencies. Anyways, it goes on to say Venezuela has been experiencing recurring blackouts since 2019 due to shortages of fuel, rampant corruption that weighs down the country's economy. Here are three tweets from notable Bitcoiners or notable people involved in the industry. First one is from you. I have lived in Venezuela. 99% of people there do not pay for electricity. I can confirm that, by the way. They'll make examples of a few miners, but because Venezuela has been forced by communism into a culture of criminality, disobedience, bribes, and murder, will guarantee that Bitcoin mining continues. By the way, I really agree with that, because even with the CCP mining ban in China, it's estimated that a portion of the hash rate is still located in China even after the ban, right? Here's Adam. He works with Upstream Data, and he goes on to say, quote, moving our Bitcoin mining operations to Venezuela for cheap hydroelectric power turned out to be a pretty terrible strategy. Alex Gladstein with the Human Rights Foundation says, Bitcoin does not mix well with dictators who try to control every aspect of their population. It also short circuits despots who try to subsidize cheap energy to avoid getting overthrown. Now, here's what I got to say about this, though, is that they'll make like a PR splash about this, but I guarantee you that those miners are already on again. like I guarantee you that they're already on. And the part where he said he kind of buried the lead, which is like, no one pays for power and electricity. This is something that I've seen. This is something, because you have to understand that there's two rates for electricity, right? There's the actual market rate, the actual black market exchange rate, and then there's the exchange rate by the government, the official exchange rate, which is significantly more expensive, but everyone actually pays the black market rate. So even if you were to pay for electricity in Venezuela, it's essentially free. Right, but of course, there's the security situation on the floor. This is not a country. It's not a country that you'd actually want to set up a large mining operation, because essentially you would need, the green light from the government. You want to get involved with the Venezuelan government. The U.S. government has sanctions against them. But I just find it interesting because they kind of use this as a giant PR stunt. Like, we are here to help. It's the Bitcoin miners that are causing the instability in the mining grid. Where have we seen that before? We've seen that excuse been used before someplace else, right? It's the Bitcoin miners. It has nothing to do with how we're running the country, or the economic hardships. It's always this outside factor that's the cause, which I find interesting, to say the least. And of course, the last piece of news that I want to get to today before I pass it on to the panel, Opti, and our guest today, Patrick. Craig Wright lied to UK court extensively and repeatedly, judge writes. It goes on to say, Craig Wright lied extensively and repeatedly in both his written and oral evidence in the Crypto Open Patent Alliance case regarding his claim to be Satoshi Nakamoto, Judge James Mellor said in his written judgment on Monday. Mellor also concluded that the issue of an injunctive relief, a legal remedy to stop a defendant from doing something, will be argued at a form of order hearing that will be appointed after the judge has been handed down. Mellor in March concluded Wright was not Nakamoto, the pseudonymous inventor of Bitcoin, and that he had not authored the cryptocurrency's foundational document known as the white paper. Goes on to say, quote, I want to thank those of you who sent me messages of support yesterday. I await the written judgment, at which point I will consider my options for appeal, Wright said on Twitter. Although the ruling could be appealed, Mellor's definitive statement following the month-long-awaited trial was cause for celebration for the broader crypto industry, which has long criticized and been victim to Wright's legal battles against members of the community. Quote, Dr. Wright is not the person who adopted or operated under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto in the period 2008 to 2011. Third, Dr. Wright is not the person who created the Bitcoin system. And fourth, he is not the author of the initial versions of the Bitcoin software, Mellor said after both parties to the trial had presented their evidence. The Crypto Open Patent Alliance, whose stated mission is to protect the adoption of crypto and fight threats against the new technology, filed to take Wright to court in 2021. The trial commenced on February 5th, with COPA accusing Wright of forgery and later perjury. It goes on to say, the judge said, quote, I'm entirely satisfied that Dr. Wright lied to the court extensively and repeatedly. Most of his lies related to the documents he had forged, which purported to support his claim. Again, this isn't Bitcoin Twitter making those claims. This is a judge. This is a magistrate. That is a big deal. Are there going to be legal consequences to this? I mean, perjury is a crime, right? Also, what I gotta say, without getting too opinionated on CSW, is this is vindication for the Space Cat Hodlonaut. This is vindication for Peter McCormack, which I believe were victims of the Craig Wright taking advantage of the UK's libel laws to to go after them, to silence them, using lawfare, using his war chest to go after opponents. And of course, someone who claims he's Satoshi, he created uncensorable money, is using the law to silence his opponents. That doesn't make sense to me personally. But now you have 3 judges in 3 separate jurisdictions, Norway, the United Kingdom, and a judge in Florida, that have all said, not as bluntly as this judge, that Craig Wright, lied. So, I mean, is it over? It looks like it. Is this Sega over? Is this, is Craig Wright going to, use the legal system to pursue other people? I mean, I think he's going to have a hard time just because of the statements coming out of this judge, which I'm sure had to review all the evidence and to come up with these types of statements. Like, this isn't Twitter. I can't emphasize this enough. This is a judge who is like very, very openly and bluntly saying that Craig Wright committed perjury. That is a big statement. And, shout out to Space Cat for fighting this. How long has he been fighting this, Opti? For years and years.
I think it's like 4 years now.
Yeah, 4 years that he's been basically persecuted. So shout out to Space Cat for being, vindicated. Shout out to Peter McCormack as well. I think justice was done in this situation. And hopefully this lawfare that he's been committing against these guys is finally over. So Opti, what's your thoughts on the CSW case and all the other things?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, like, I think the very obvious, and I'm not here to like call anyone's names, but only a complete psychopath would want to claim to be Satoshi, because Satoshi knew that if people knew who he was, then he would very quickly be attacked and go to jail. And that's the beauty of him leaving in 2010, is basically saying, like, here's my creation. No one's in control of this. There's no figurehead to chop down. And hopefully after this news, we can finally close this chapter behind us and maybe get some closure on this. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen from here. But of course, shouts out to Hodlonaut and even Peter McCormack for having to put up their own sats to fight this case. And hopefully this won't ever happen again. So shouts out to the 3 different judges, or 3 different courts at this point, that have all confirmed the very same thing. So let's hope that the next time, or rather, let's hope that this is the last time and there is no next time, because, there's just so much damage that has been done for not only just Bitcoiners, but I think the Bitcoin space in general, with all the forks and confusing people on, what the real Bitcoin is and what's really Satoshi's vision and all this stuff. So hopefully the cargo cult members that have been led astray on the various forks of Bitcoin can finally see the truth and come back to the real Bitcoin, even though their heads are blowing up right now. Like, no, it is the real Bitcoin. Yeah, whatever. I think we can all agree, at least all of us Bitcoiners can agree, that they are lost in the sauce. Anyways, let's go back to the beginning, to the Jack Dorsey news. Obviously, it's my role here to be Jack Dorsey is bearish. Come on, man. This is bearish. No, I'm trolling. Obviously, I think $1 million by 2030 in 6 years would be incredible. But hopefully the idea is that Bitcoin will be worth $1 million in today's purchasing power, which really means that it's going to go over $1 million. So let's hope that that's the idea. But hey, maybe the dollar won't inflate as much as we imagine it will in the 6 years, and so hopefully $1 million doesn't go way of the Venezuelan bolivar. And that's the perfect transition, because man, we had a blast in Canada tearing up the Venezuelan bolivars. One of our friends had his kid there, and we had bricks of Venezuelan bolivars, and I think we did the math. We had $102 Venezuelan bolivars in bricks. and I forget what it was, but it was like 200 pennies or something. Like, it was a ridiculous inflation rate. It was a ridiculous exchange rate. And one of our friends, he had his kids there, and they were like having a blast. They were just ripped up probably like hundreds of Venezuelan bolivars, and we had to clean up after them. And shouts out to Isabella, because she was encouraging them, and then we had to clean it up. But man, the irony is not lost on me. Of course, they got to close the escape hatches. Of course, they're going to try to stop Bitcoin mining at this point. And like Nico said, it seemed like a PR move, because if I remember correctly, Nico, hasn't this been happening? Didn't they do this before a couple of years ago? They did a very similar thing, or maybe this was more privately and they didn't make it so public, where they were basically stealing ASICs and then mining for themselves. But now they're doing it publicly, like, hey guys, we're stopping these big bad Bitcoin miners now. But man, I'm not surprised, especially when you really understand the dynamics playing out. Like, if you have a hyperinflating currency, if you have a very weak fiat currency, then of course, as a despot, you got to stop people going to the escape hatches. We hear this rhetoric coming from everywhere. We've seen this tried before. We will continue to see this happen. And of course, this is why they are so actively hell-bent against Bitcoin, is because it is an actual solution. As we say all the time here, say what you want about politics, but there is no political solution to this. You need to save in something that cannot be debased, that cannot be censored. And of course, that is Bitcoin. And the more people fight Bitcoin, the more I know we are correct and we are on the right path. As I say all the time, you can't ban Bitcoin. You can only ban yourself from Bitcoin. So, hey, man, as much as this is harmful for the Venezuelan population, or rather the miners in this particular situation, they can't stop Bitcoin. And this just makes me know that we're right. We keep winning. It's super awesome when I see tyrants try to fight Bitcoin. I love it. Accelerate, Nico, accelerate.
So I'm gonna pass it on to Patrick, and I also want to apologize for anyone who's watching in the audience right now. I don't have my usual soundboard. It got destroyed during our travels to Canada. I will get that fixed by Tuesday or Wednesday. So bear with us. I also can't hear myself back. So I usually am able to do that and catch some slip ups, which apparently happened while I was speaking. Anyways, I do want to pass it on to Patrick. Patrick, what's your take? How many times have Bitcoin been banned in all these different countries and it not working?
Yeah. Hey, so I was just thinking this is kind of a cool format because I can watch this scrolling chat on the side. But look, there's a lot to unpack in all that news. And not only that, I just wanted to address a couple of the comments on the side. So one of the comments that caught my attention was how, I talked about how Terrell is focused on ESG and how that isn't in line with proof of work ethos. And I honestly couldn't disagree more with that, because I think particularly in the Bitcoin community, right, and why it's been banned in a lot of other areas is a function of political misunderstanding, but also political misunderstanding about sustainability and what we as Bitcoin miners provide to the grid and the benefits. So not only the benefits that we provide, right, to this decentralized system, right, for all the points you guys have talked about, it's way better than fiat, obviously. But I think you have to understand like how the power grid actually works. And our company is founded by 30-year private power veterans, right? And so in the US, particularly, I think if Bitcoin mining is going to flourish, it has to be all about sustainability, increasing the penetration of renewable resources like wind and solar, and Bitcoin helping that increase in penetration by providing floors for prices. Like, for example, for wind in Texas at night when power prices are negative, we can pay that wind farm 2 cents because that's an amazingly good price of power for us to mine power, which will allow that wind farm to go into business, get 2 cents from us overnight when prices are otherwise negative, and then provide that service to the grid at a higher price when there's a lot of demand from commercial and residential customers. And so I think it's really critically important to think about sustainable zero carbon, in particular Bitcoin mining in the US. Because again, the way the grid works, like we always say, we are never going to be an incremental unit of demand. So when you think about where our Bitcoin sites are sited, we're at places where there is an abundance of excess zero carbon power. And what we do is we sit there, and when the residential and commercial grid isn't stressed, we soak up that power. And by doing that, remember, every single person that's on this chat, all of us both as residential consumers of electricity, if you ever look at your electricity bill, you pay for two things. One, you pay for the commodity, right, which is just based on how much you use of it. But then you pay for transmission and distribution, which are all the wires to bring the power from the generation station to your house. That is a fixed charge. So same as residential consumers, us in our Bitcoin mine, we pay for the actual commodity, the amount we use. Then at our Lake Mariner site in upstate New York, we're also being charged transmission and distribution charges. And so the beauty of that is that transmission and distribution charge is fixed. The system is the system. And so by us being there and consuming a significant amount of power that would otherwise be unused, we're actually spreading out that transmission and distribution charge among a much wider base. So we're actually lowering the price for others in upstate New York on their transmission and distribution charges. So that ethos, that sustainability ethos, I think is super critical to Bitcoin mining succeeding. And not only that, but being revered as having a true place in the evolution of the electricity grid in the US. That's how the grid is going to increase renewable penetration and how we're going to get away from fossil fuels. I mean, I live in Wyoming. I got two little kids. They're 8 and 10. My 10-year-old, as soon as he knew that I was a CFO of a Bitcoin mining company, he's like, Dad, you're not mining with coal, are you? And I said, no, of course not. So I again, like the younger generations and everyone that's into Bitcoin mining and the way we are going to succeed in this country is absolutely pushing that, zero carbon, renewable ESG thesis. That is what I think will allow us to all to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. And thank you for that insight, Patrick. And I just want to ask you, why do you think there's such a disconnect between, and I think this is what we saw in Venezuela. I think we saw this in Norway as well, is why do you think that there's this kind of in New York State, I believe as well, they pass a mining memorandum where essentially no more proof of work mining as well. Why do you think that there's such a disconnect between some politicians that I know that they're trying to do good, right? Maybe not in the case of Venezuela. Maybe that's just trying to cover up some shortcomings of the local government over there. But in the case of like New York, or in the case of some of the more developed countries, why do you think that there's such a disconnect between certain politicians and what Bitcoin is actually doing? Because you're absolutely right. Like Bitcoin mining is a consumer of stranded energy, excess energy, right? Energy that was already going to, because if not, it wouldn't make economical sense for you to use that energy to mine, right? You kind of have to find these isolated energy pockets, right? That's where it makes economical sense, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think there is such a disconnect? And what can we do as an industry to really educate these lawmakers on the reality of this? I believe you're gonna go with the that's where this whole ESG movement and this ESG strategy from TeraWolf comes into play. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So look, that's a great question, but let's take New York, because New York is really applicable to us. We took a site that was the last coal plant in New York, retired it, and in return, got a long-term contract to buy wholesale power from Niagara Falls. I mean, that's win-win for everybody. Not only that, we took employees that have been working at that site for 30 years and retrained them, hired more jobs because we're constructing all these buildings there. And so the local community loves that, right? And that's what Bitcoin's all about to me. It's a feel-good story where, the education district is still getting taxes because we've repositioned this big, nasty fossil fuel-fired coal plant into now this beautiful Bitcoin mine. So I just think in cases like that, it's win-win. So New York, right, they get a little bit of a bad rap, but New York went after one of our fellow peers that's a public Bitcoin miner because they took a formerly retired gas plant sort of unretired it, so reactivate it, and then we're mining Bitcoin with natural gas. And if anybody knows New York, I have in-laws that live in Cornell. I mean, it is the biggest, not in my backyard state. No fracking, they don't want more transmission lines. They just retired Indian Point nuclear facility, right, which was a nuke just north of New York City. So it is a highly political state. But they have embraced us with open arms. There's a bunch of other Bitcoin miners, I know up in Buffalo and Niagara that are also mining from hydro, and they have fully embraced that. So really the ban that New York politicians drove was they didn't want any more fossil fuels or plants that were retired formally being reactivated and coming on. And, again, I generally I agree. I think most people on this call will probably say, yeah, that makes sense. I don't like it when states or jurisdictions ban Bitcoin mining, but I also am of the mind that we shouldn't be mining Bitcoin with fossil fuels, right? And so, yeah, I think it's in my experience, as you teach people, Nico, how we are mining Bitcoin, again, with stranded resources that are allowing more renewable resources to come onto the grid to be there in times of demand. I mean, that's a great story. And that's how we're going to continue to succeed in the US and frankly, drive more of Bitcoin mining here into the US. And so I think, look, I was on a Twitter Spaces a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about Bitcoin mining abroad. And I would tell you, that's really hard to do because you don't have the same rule of law in a lot of places that you do have in the States. And so you might be able to get a good price in a different international jurisdiction, but if that regime changes, meaning the president or whoever's running the country changes, you just put hundreds of millions of dollars in the ground, right, for transformers and buildings and miners, and that's a big bet to take on shareholders' money. And so we're less inclined to do that. I think we've got a lot of running room in front of us at our existing sites in the US that have really low power costs. And now that we're into this next halving, this game is now all about power cost. If you have good power, you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to stack a lot of coins. If you don't have good power, it doesn't matter if you can grow to 50 exahash because you're never going to make money on your mining operation. And I think I want to come back to the news because Michael Saylor's mousetrap is amazing, but it's very different than Bitcoin mining, right? Because if you think about what he's doing, MicroStrategies is borrowing in fiat at a zero cost, essentially, and they're turning around and buying Bitcoin, and they get to go for a ride on Bitcoin. That's an amazing strategy, right? Our strategy as a miner is I can mine it because of my power cost and my economies of scale at 40,000 today. And it's on the screen at 67. So I'm mining it, or 68 now, but I'm mining it for almost half the price that it's on the screen. If you can't mine it for cheaper than it's on the screen, then I don't really think you have any long-term business being in business. You have to be profitable. And so I think what you're going to see here in the next few months when a lot of the public companies file their second quarter results is a lot of the big peers don't have good power and are not mining profitably. And so that's a bummer because as shareholders, you're better off just buying the ETF if you're losing money on every Bitcoin you're mining.
Absolutely. And I want to further explore that, and get into the intricacies of that because I'm really interested, especially because we don't have a lot of public mining execs on the show very often, right? We're good friends with Ben Gagnon from Bitfarms. We had the chief technology officer from BitDeer. So very excited to further explore this topic with you, Patrick. But before we get to the culture and dive deeper into this topic, we got to run some ads because we have to pay the bills around here. So first, I do want to give a shout out to, of course, the Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats. Find local Bitcoiners and events and merchants near you. The Orange Pill app is the Bitcoin social layer. It's probably a good idea to build up that Bitcoiner Rolodex, because I truly believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, Bitcoiners are going to be some of the most influential and powerful people all over the world. What you could do is you could scan the QR code on your screen and join the 10,485 Bitcoiners that are currently on the app. As a very clever filtration system, so you'll only find Bitcoiners on the application. And if you're traveling to a new city, like we did to Montreal this weekend, and got a lot of messages from Montrealers saying, Nico, welcome to Montreal. It has this very cool geographical feature. So it will literally show you the Bitcoiners that are near you so you can connect with them, right? So download the Orange Pill app. It's one of the best ways to reach me directly. You could send me a DM on the Orange Pill app and I will get back to you. So download the Orange Pill app today, scan the QR code, or check the link in the video description. All right, everybody, let's get to the culture so we can talk more about TeraWolf.
The Daily Culture.
All right, everybody. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, KABOOMRACKS, the most trusted place to buy, sell, and host mining equipment. What you could do is you could scan the QR code or check the link in the video right now, and it will take you directly to their Telegram marketplace so you can connect with a member of their sales team. They make purchasing their products easy and transparent. You could also sell your mining equipment with them, access their vast network of domestic and international customers when you sell your mining equipment with KABOOMRACKS. So scan the QR code, check the link in the video description. If you want to buy personal Bitcoin miners that you can set up yourself, and that's pretty difficult to do, you can check out our sponsor, KABOOMRACKS, the most trusted place to buy, sell mining equipment. Anyways, I do want to get back to Patrick. We are having this very, very interesting conversation. I didn't want to interrupt it, but I had to because it was just going to lead down another rabbit hole. So Patrick, I have so many questions. And first question is, you buried so many leads in what you were saying, but specifically about how, and this is something, by the way, that is just, it's just Bitcoin, right? Only the most efficient miners survive. Right, specifically after the halving, right? Isn't that crazy, Patrick? Especially from someone of your background, you said you had a Wall Street background, that there is this commodity that it is literally set in stone that after every 4 years, the amount that you're mining is literally it gets cut in half. And my question to you is, what type of person would want to get involved in that type of industry? Because it sounds so cutthroat. It sounds so brutal, So what's your take on that? And I know you're going to appreciate that question, especially with that Wall Street background.
No, look, I love it. Look, I mean, I'm, Wall Street background, but orange pilled like everyone else. But look, I think this business, is really misunderstood on a public scale basis, right? I've been a commodity investor my whole career. So energy, power, utilities, oil and gas, coal mining, copper, master limited partnerships, pipelines, LNG, everything. And so to me, it's the simplest commodity business ever. Literally, we have 4 costs, but most miners have 3. It's power, which is by far your biggest cost, right? And is a function of economies of scale. And then, a function of power price. And then the other 3 costs that we have are a function of economies of scale. In other words, how many exahash you have, right? And that's SG&A, which is just what it costs us to run the public company, operating costs, which are our site level people. And then we have debt that we're rapidly paying down. So we do have interest expense. But literally, think about it. It's just 4 costs and 3 for most miners that don't have debt. And the number 1 cost is power. So if you have low power price, you're good. If you don't have low power price, you're not good. It's just that simple. And the crazy thing about power, right, is you can't change it. You either are located in a good area where there's an abundance of excess power, so you have a low power price, or you have a power price contract like we do, like Riot does, like some others in the space do, and that affords you really low cost power. And so, I think it's one of those businesses where it is a very simple commodity business. When I pitch it to insurance providers for TeraWolf, investors, it is like any other commodity business I've ever analyzed. And I think what sort of distinguishes us from other miners is during my institutional investing career, every single public company gives guidance, right? So I'll give you like Valero, one of the largest refiners in the US. They tell you what their capacity is expected to be for the year, and they tell you what their costs are going to be. And they put that all on a piece of paper, right, in their presentation, just like we do. If you pull up our presentation and go, I think it's page 13 or 14, we actually lay out for you right there, every single cost in the company. So that was actual in the first quarter in the left column, estimated for the second quarter, and then estimated for the second half. And then you can get full year. And we do it for you in dollars. We do it for you in dollars per BTC. And then we do it for you in hash cost to make it as simple as possible so that anybody can go look and pull up, okay, hash price today is 50. TeraWulf, is in the second quarter here, estimated at 39. So they should be making $11 on every single one of their, petahash today, right? So that type of disclosure is, to me, what is required from all of the public companies, because it's exactly what every single oil and gas, refining, copper company, any legitimized commodity business that's public provides this level of guidance. And so I think until all of our peers do that, it's really difficult for institutional investors to look at the space and figure out who's making money and who isn't. Now, I loved Opti said earlier on in the session, I love this, is one of my favorite quotes. He said, the numbers don't lie. I like to say the numbies don't lie. But yeah, I mean, you're going to get second quarter results from a lot of our peers, and they're going to show that they're free cash flow negative, which means their cost to mine a Bitcoin is, 75,000 post halving, with about 45 to 50,000 of that being power, right? If you go back to that page where I showed you, only a small portion of, if you kind of scroll, so you can see here, like in the second quarter for us, our power is going to cost around 15.7 million total, but that's 22,700 BTC per day. That is because like I said, last year we realized 3.2 cent power. This year in these numbers, we're projecting 3.5 cents, right? So if you're going to realize 6 cents or 6 to 7 cents, which I know some of our bigger public peers are, that first number right there, and when you look in that second quarter, it's going to be like 45 to 50,000 because of the halving. So yeah, the one funky thing, right, about our business versus other commodity businesses, right, will have times where their margins get crunched, but that's usually when there's an economic crisis, right? Like a recession or otherwise. And so in Bitcoin mining, we have this natural kind of recession, if you will, every 4 years as a commodity business, which is peculiar. But that's why, I get asked all the time, where do you think Bitcoin is going? Where do you think network hash rate is going? I don't know. I think it's going higher for sure. But I focus on what I can control. And what I can control at TeraWulf is my cost, which is getting my cost as low as possible by minimizing my power cost, minimizing my SG&A, which also is how much executives get paid, right? So we minimize that by fact that we founded the company and own 40% of the equity of the company already. So you won't see any like NBA style contracts of management equity comp in our numbers. Yeah, we get paid a reasonable salary, but it's not tens of millions of dollars like a lot of our peers do. So yeah, I think that's, I don't know, I'll pause there, and I'm sure there are some questions, but that's kind of how I think about it.
Absolutely. And I have some, I think a very, very straightforward question, Patrick, for you is, right. So, this is a Bitcoiner audience. I'm sure that I'm positive actually that there's people in the audience that not only own Bitcoin in self-custody, but they have exposure to the likes of MicroStrategy, the likes of, some of the ETFs for whatever reason. And of course, Bitcoin miners as well. Now, my question to you is, Patrick, is why should someone, buy TeraWulf stock versus buying spot Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's a great question. So simple answer. When you're long TeraWulf, you're long a couple different options, right? One is I'm mining it at 40,000 and it's on the screens at 68. So I'm making 28,000 of profit on every Bitcoin I mine today. And today I'm mining, somewhere between 6 and 6.5 Bitcoin. So that's number one. Number two, You own an ETF, you don't get exposure to transaction fees. You own a Bitcoin miner, you do. Number 3, we are very long infrastructure. And if you are not long infrastructure now as a Bitcoin miner, you got a big problem, because now you're competing with Google, Meta, Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, and their cost of capital is very different than the cost of capital for a Bitcoin miner. And there's an arms race right now for power capacity and infrastructure capacity for high power compute for all those companies. So that's the simple answer. 1, I can mine it cheaper than you're seeing it on the screen. I take that profit right now and I'm paying down debt. Once I'm debt free, I'll have the ability to stack Bitcoin on my balance sheet. And we may pursue that. But 1, I mine it cheaper than what you get it on the screen. 2, I get exposure to transaction fees, right? And I've got the added benefit of I'm helping secure the Bitcoin network. And 3, I am very long infrastructure that, we may use some of that infrastructure, which that business gets a 20 to 25 times EBITDA multiple, versus Bitcoin miners tend to get 6 to 12 times EBITDA. So as a management team that has a lot of the equity of the company already, we may use some of that infrastructure to enter into that high power compute business. But if you are a Bitcoin miner and you don't own your own infrastructure right now that you can expand into, you got a problem, because you now got to compete with a bunch of folks that have much lower cost of capital.
Absolutely. And another question for you also, Patrick, is I've noticed a general trend with all the public miners, including TeraWulf, which is, they all kind of had this blow off top in the last bull market of 2021, and they've seemed to have come down. Now, I know TeraWulf has performed extremely well. I believe you guys are up 25 to 28% in the last year or so, and year to date, I believe, or since the beginning of the year. So it seems like you guys are making a recovery in terms of the price of your stock. What do you anticipate? I don't know what the legalities of this are from a public company sense, but we are expecting this bull run to continue. What can your investors expect if Bitcoin continues this bull run?
Yeah, look, for us, and I'll answer that 2 ways. But look, for us, like I said, we have a really low power cost. We took on some debt to get the company public in 2021. And so we've been laser focused on maximizing profitability to pay down that debt. I think we're going to get through that debt this year. We'll pay it off. And like I said, that will then free us up. So if we want to, we can start stacking Bitcoin on our balance sheet. And given our low cost of capital, I think we'll be able to do a lot of that. But I also think, we may, like I mentioned to you, I grew up in the energy power commodity patch, and I've seen kind of generational wealth creation through structures like the master limited partnership structure, where, they pay big dividends. And so I would love to be one of the first Bitcoin miners to pay a dividend in, say, Bitcoin, right? It's not all that different from paying a dividend in cash, but, instead of giving me a brokerage account, you give me your Bitcoin wallet. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to do, like along that front. So I think you'll see us kind of blaze that trail for Bitcoin miners once we pay off our debt this year. But look, I think with regard to our stock price, I would say it's no secret. My friend and colleague and CEO Paul Prager has been out there on a lot of public channels, kind of lamenting our performance. But I would just say, I just had a big slug of stock vest in the last month. And if you go look at my Form 4, I have the option to net settle, meaning the company retains shares to pay my tax bill, or I can write a personal check. And that was when the stock was around $2. And, I wrote a $230,000 check. And that's the second check I've written. I've written a couple 100,000 other checks here. So I'm probably up to around 500,000 of, just personal checks I've been writing when the stock was kind of in the, $1.50 to $2 range, because I don't want to sell stock there. So yeah, I'm fully aligned with you. I think all the Bitcoin miners are positioned or at least, and there's a chart, I think in our slide deck, I think it's page 11 that you guys had up earlier, but shows EBITDA per exahash. And this to me is super critical as our business matures, right? You got to focus on who is actually making money on their exahash. So not just, I get growing exahash is important, right? Because it's an influence on how many BTC you can stack. But you could grow to 50 or 100 exahash. If you're not making any money, that means the only way you're staying afloat is by issuing a ton of equity. And so again, that's where I think it's a little deceiving to shareholders. Like, we are making a lot of money. Clean, as you can see in this top chart, Clean Spark, best in class, making a lot of money, right? So that's what, we're second there. Core is right behind us. Then Cypher. I mean, to me, you want to be invested in companies that are using renewable, zero carbon energy, because I think that is what is the long dated strategy here in the US that is, aligned with our political incentives. And then you want to be in companies that are actually making money, because that's going to limit the dilution over time. If not, if you're getting, really diluted into oblivion, then I think you should probably just own an ETF, because you can't get diluted owning an ETF, but you're not going to get that exposure that I mentioned, the transaction fees and the infrastructure.
So why do you believe that, because just compared, and, some miners perform, some miners didn't perform, especially with this recent rally. None, I believe, have reached the all-time high of the, the previous bull market, which kind of makes sense, obviously. But, why do you believe some miners performed, and why do you believe some miners didn't perform? Is this just a case of the market hasn't, found your guys' value proposition? Do you believe it's the debt that you guys incurred? What's your thesis behind that?
Sure. Yeah, no, this page to me says it, right? I mean, you look, the best performing miner year to date is Clean Spark by a long stretch. And that's because they successfully grew exahash with some dilution, but they are highly profitable. Those are that's the two most winning pieces, right? You got to be highly profitable and you got to grow. So I think if you can accomplish that, and by the way, I think Iris just announced a similar strategy. I think Iris will be sort of the next Clean Spark, right, over the next few months here, because they have a very profitable enterprise, infrastructure first folks, and they're focused on renewable power. That is a winning combination, just like TeraWolf. So I think we will be right behind them. I think we got to get through our debt, which, a lot in the retail community view as a negative. I think candidly as management, we view that as well. That being said, I think in this next cycle, you will see corporate level debt come into play for a lot of miners, because it's a good way to finance yourself without dilution. So, it's ironic that we're kind of nearing the end of paying down our debt when I think it actually may come back into vogue here. But, that is what it is. But yeah, I think once we get through that deck and we start stacking BTC on balance sheet, I think our story changes significantly. And we have, like I said, if we grow into our infrastructure in 2025, we'll be close to 30 exahash exiting 2025. And I think as you kind of look to where the bigger players are, I think it's table stakes now. You got to be sort of north of 20 exahash. And again, key, you have got to have low power. It does not matter what your and I'll be even more specific on that. But like, I produced 32 million of EBITDA in the first quarter, like real adjusted EBITDA, right? Riot, who I really like, I think they have a great operation, but they're close to 50% larger than me. They produced 11 of EBITDA. And so, again, I think you have to look at the nuances of each business to try to figure out, okay, who's going to be able to grow, who's got low power, but who's actually profitable, because that really matters.
That matters, right? 100%. I think being a Bitcoiner, a couple cycles in this industry, right? You learn things about the halving and just the volatility, right? And the most efficient miners survive. So Patrick, we are getting close to the top of the hour, and I do want to be respectful for your time. So I do have two more questions for you. First question, actually, it came from someone in the audience. Andrew Williams asked, I don't know if you could reveal this information, but he asked, what mining pools does TeraWolf use? Do they have any preference, and why?
Yeah, great question. So we use Foundry. They've been, we love them. I think they're, if not the first largest pool, the second largest pool, US based. We've got a great relationship with them and really happy with the performance. So, Yeah, that's who we use. I do think, Andrew, as the industry matures, and particularly call it the top like 5 or 10 miners get a lot bigger, I think over time we probably will go and have our own pool, or potentially join another miner's pool. I think that makes logical sense over time. But right now, super happy with Foundry, and think really highly of their team and the product they deliver.
Absolutely. And last question for you, Patrick, is if you had any last words to our audience right now. There's currently 1,189 people watching live between YouTube and X, and about another 60 or so watching on Rumble. What would that message be?
I think it'd just be thanks for your support for the community. It's a tight-knit community. Keep spreading the message, and take a look at TeraWulf. We love your support. We think we're doing the right thing. I think we want to make money. We want to make stack Bitcoin, but it's also, I think, really important to do the right thing in Bitcoin and in the Bitcoin community. And we feel like with our zero carbon focus and ESG focus that we're leading in that area, and also with disclosure. So really appreciate you guys having me on, and thank you very much for your time and the questions.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, that was
Patrick.
great.
And I just want to, reiterate this aspect. And I specifically read this quote from Jack Dorsey because I think it really applies here as it relates to Bitcoin. It's something that we've mentioned many, many times in regards to the show. And I'm just going to read Dorsey's quote because I think it says it all. The most amazing thing about Bitcoin, apart from the founding story, is anyone who works on it or gets paid in it or buys it for themselves. Everyone who puts any effort into making it better is making the entire ecosystem better, which makes the price goes up. And that includes Bitcoin miners, right? This is the beauty of an aligned incentive structure model that, whether it's just, a Bitcoin show on YouTube, Rumble, and X, or a publicly traded Bitcoin mining company, our ethos, our incentive structures are aligned because of Bitcoin. And that's very foreign. That's a very foreign concept, but I hope people understand that. Anyways, guys, if you want to buy the TeraWulf stock, the ticker is WULF. You can find it on your broker of choice. I want to thank Patrick Fleury for joining us on the show today. Thank you so much, Patrick. Really appreciate it. Where could people find you where could people find TeraWulf or get the latest updates? Where would you send them?
Yeah, if you can follow us on Twitter at TeraWulf, that'd be sweet. And then if anybody has any direct questions for me, always feel free to email me. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. But my email is fleury@terawulf.com. It's F as in Frank, LEURY at terawulf.com. And yeah, reach out with any questions. Like I said, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But really appreciate your support of the community, and getting a positive message out.
Well, thank you, Patrick, for joining us on Simply Bitcoin. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, that was our show. Like I said, I apologize. My soundboard got absolutely crushed while traveling, coming back from Canada, but I already ordered a replacement, so we should have the audio back up to par by Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll also have a meme review. I see you guys in the audience talking about this. We'll have the meme review back on Friday. And guys, if you enjoyed the show, smash the like button so you can help us with the algos, of course. And we'll be back tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
It was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, on a mission to enable independence.